has an injury right now, which is why she's shaved. She has bilateral iliopsoas strains. I do not recommend them. She's been on crate rest for 4 weeks. So you can imagine how fun that is. So I've got her on this prong collar. I wouldn't normally have that, but I can't have her just like lunging. So I also wouldn't normally have her on a leash to do this, but again, she's not supposed to be jumping or doing anything too crazy. So what I'm going to show is, so when I taught Zara how to retrieve, I knew about force fetch, and I was just not sure it was something I thought I had this, mental fortitude to do myself. So I started looking at different methods to use. She's a bit of a softer dog. Some of these things, this is why we're showing a variety of methods. You kind of have to know your dog and know yourself, and maybe force fetch is not for you, and there's nothing wrong with it. I think it works for a lot of dogs, and if I had done it with her, maybe it would have worked, but I wanted to do something different. So the method I used, she's very food motivated, and she is clicker trained. So that is what I did. The exact method I'm showing here is not what I did with her. I did something slightly different, but I really like this method, and I used it this past summer to kind of reteach her to see how it would go. And I also taught my other dog, who's a Rhodesian Ridgeback, to retrieve doing this process. If you want to look on my YouTube channel at some point, I got videos of them both doing it, going through the whole process. And if I can teach a Rhodesian Ridgeback to retrieve using this, I'm pretty sure you can teach any bird dog to do it, because he had zero desire to retrieve beforehand, and he will retrieve these bumpers all day long, which is kind of crazy. So this method is a free-shaped clicker retrieve. It was developed by Jo Lawrence, who is a Force Free Gundog Trainer in the UK. So this is a really good book. If you're interested in this method, I would highly recommend getting this book. It's not expensive, and it walks you through everything. She also offers an online course that you could take. So that's kind of where this comes from. And I'm not going to go through every single step, and I'm going to go through quickly, but this is kind of where you'll get an idea of how it works. So if you're not familiar with free shaping is basically the dog is kind of offering behaviors, and you're marking them, and you kind of gradually up the criteria. So you start with something really small, and eventually it gets up to what you want. So it's a process that requires a fair amount of patience. So if you don't have a lot of time and you're not patient, maybe this is not for you. But I think it's a really cool way to teach things, and the next dog I will 100% be teaching it using this method. When I taught Zara to retrieve, I used a clicker retrieve with a lot of treats, and I did end up adding a little bit of e-collar at the end to kind of overlay and enforce the command. She was 5 years old when I taught her to retrieve, and she wouldn't pick up a bird at all before then. So I felt like I needed to add a little bit of e-collar at the end there. My next dog, I don't know. I may not need that. We'll see. I'm not opposed to the e-collar. I just, I think if the dog understands, you can add it, but that's just what I did with her. But since I did use this other method for her, I didn't use force fetch, she has never ever dropped a bird in a test. She is a dog that lives to retrieve. Retrieving is one of her strengths. So I'm just saying this not to brag, but to say that these other methods can work as well, depending on the dog. It's all about you and your dog, which you think is best. So what I'm going to do for a clicker retrieve is you want to make sure that your dog is clicker trained first. So if you haven't used a clicker, it's a little thing that makes a sound, and it just marks a behavior very clearly instead of using your voice. Sometimes you might say yes, 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 in different tones. A clicker is very clear. So if your dog's not clicker trained, you just want to spend some time clicking and giving it some treats. So basically the click shows them that something's coming. A treat is coming. So Zara is very clicker trained. She will do anything for the treats. So this works for her. The other thing we're going to do with the clicker retrieve is I'm not going to name anything until it's really good. So the other thing, I'm not going to say, you'll see me, I'm not going to say anything during this process, but I'm going to talk through it. But if I was training her, I wouldn't really be saying much. I'm going to gradually raise the criteria as we go through. And I'm using cheese to train. You can use any sort of food you want. If you don't want your dog to get fat and you're training a lot, you can use their kibble if they eat kibble. You can train with their dinner. A lot of times at dinner they're hungry, have them work with their food, and then they eat it in 10 minutes instead of 2 seconds. So the other thing you need to do with this process is watch your dog carefully. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start once I clicked because she knows to kind of get a retreat. So she didn't try to do anything else. Now the next step with this method, and I've got this towel here just so she can see the treats. I would throw a treat away. I'm not going to do that with her because she's not supposed to be running. But now I'm going to wait for her to go back to the bumper. Let's just start this over again. And obviously we're out here. This is my demo dog who's, maybe not cooperating today, but hey, off. Zara. So she looked at it.
I don't want to do it.
There, she looked at it again. And she's obviously going ahead, but so now I'm going to raise the criteria. Now I want a nose touch. So I'm going to click for that. Then you move on to mouth on it, which she's already done. And I'm not saying anything. Then you move on to slight pickup, which you just did. And then a slight pickup with a little bit of distance. And the book goes through all the details on how to kind of when to move and a little excited. The other thing you're going to do is, okay, so I've got my slight movement, is once she's doing that pretty good, I'm going to proof against the food. That's a safe they call. So I'm going to have her pick it up. I clicked. And I'm going to have her hold it. Walk towards it. I'm going to show her a piece of food. Nope. She dropped it. Nope. Yes. So what I did, I'm teaching her she can't drop it until I tell her. This is another step in the process. She's already got it again. So I'm leading her around with it, but she's not dropping it until I tell her. And then you get to the point where you're holding it. The other thing you're going to do in this process is a hand target. So one of the things when you're teaching retrieving, you probably want to, hey, stop, is have your dog come to a certain spot. Some people might want to, like a left heel. Some people might want a front presentation. So in this method, you teach a hand target where you teach your dog to target your hands. They bring it right to your hand, and you can shape that into a side or front. So to practice that, you just kind of look at your hand. Sorry. Ooh. She's going to naturally look at my hand, and then I want her touching my hand. Ooh, my hand is so nice. She touches it, and I would normally be like throwing this away. And once I've got that going, then I can integrate this so she's coming to the hand. Yeah. And I'm still not saying, I still haven't named this, I haven't given it any verbal. And she's still dropping in the click, which is what I want. Now,